Hi, it's Manny Goldman, the founder of it'sallaboutwomen.com and the visionary behind Love Your Life Summit. This is a private series only for the people in my life, people that are near and dear, people that are coaches and mentors of mine, and that's what we're having today with Lisa Greenfield. She's with us. She's actually a specialist with your hands, so we're really excited to bring her in. She's someone that's really touched my heart in so many ways. She's someone that I've worked with personally. She's read my hands a few times. She's even read my children's hands, my wife's hands, and the insights and the clarity that she brings is tremendously amazing, as well as when I have a crisis, I go to her for some astrology insight because I don't know what's going on. Something's got to be going on, and she's been extremely helpful. So before I bring her on, let me give her the formal introduction that she so rightfully deserves, and then we'll get right into asking her why she loves her life and why she loves her hands. So let me do the formal introduction. All right, Lisa Greenfield is the founder and CEO of Truth in Hands. Her business is hand analysis, the business of helping people understand the visual language each brain writes on the hands with nerves expressing thoughts and feelings. Lisa brings a lifetime of experience reading over 10,000, that's right, 10,000 hands from around the globe, including from iconic film stars, rock stars, international CEOs, television personalities, and the very great Manny Goldman. Lisa has unparalleled history in hand analysis that brings a rich, deep understanding of human nature and the reflection it has on our hands. So, Lisa, welcome to the call.
Yes, Manny.
And I always say
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. And I say welcome to the call as if this is an interview on a telephone. I'm so used to saying call, but we're here together on video, which is a huge promise that we've made, and it's we're so happy to have you.
Oh, well, I love it, and I love the technology that you're introducing as well. So it's still a call. I mean, the call is connecting us. We just get visual with it as well, which is always a plus. Leave it to you to deliver more, Manny.
Oh, thank you.
It's right there in your hands.
We got it in your hands. We got to break the paradigm here. So thank you for that. So Lisa, let's get into the loving of your life and or loving of your hands. So tell us, what do you love about your life, and how does hand analysis relate to that?
Well, one of the things I absolutely love is in hand analysis, I always struggled with, Louise Hay is brilliant, and she would say, just love yourself, just love yourself. And there's so many other good, wise teachers that would say the key to really changing from the inside out is to start with loving yourself. I had a real struggle with that. That was not easy for me because I thought I did. It's like, well, what does it mean to love yourself? So for me, hand analysis became, I started it when I was so young, but I started connecting the fact that they were saying this with what I was doing with hands. And when I got to see people, when I had a chance to drop in on their hands, I get to see the whole person, because what's written there in your hands is so much less limited. They say we use roughly 10% of our brain, right? So the hands reflect a good deal of what's there in the other 90% in our brain, without ego attached, without limitations. And it's a chance to see other people, and for me then turn that vision on myself to see myself as a whole being, in not just limited by those ego moments, those caught being human moments, the things that we can focus on as a means of self-improvement. So there's some of what I really love about hands. It's a framework to see yourself in a bigger perspective. And when you've got that big perspective, suddenly our faults assume more of, it's like a shadow in a painting. It gives it depth rather than ruining it. So our faults actually take an appropriate place when we're seeing ourselves in a much bigger perspective. And that's some of what you can see when you see somebody looking through their hands.
Wow, that's great. Can you tell us more about that and about how, hands give you an insight into someone, either they're loving their life or whether they're not loving their life, or maybe there could be some breakthroughs for them about right around the corner?
Absolutely. One of the things that I love is our hands have a function, obviously their form and function, but they also have a function in how they express us. And if we look at, our fingers are where we start. That is our interaction with the world. When you look hands up, here's the outermost part of us. And you'll see that there's us and then there's space in between. So there's room for other people. So this tells you a lot about how you interact. Then when we start with the palm, you've got actually the very first line that rolls across it is your heart line. Now, the heart is the first line for a reason. Those of you who might be familiar with Dr. Bruce Lipton, he talks about the fact on the electromagnetic scale, our hearts have 100 times the electrical charge of our brain and 5,000 times the magnetic charge. So we're supposed to start first with our heart and magnetize in those things that we love. But most of us are so busy guarding our hearts because what we love, we fear losing. So what happens is, when there's a rich treasure trove, you put heavy guards on it. So there's a lot of fear and doubt that comes up. And what that's bracketed underneath our heart line, we've got our headline. And that starts up here above our thumb and rolls either straight across the hand or it starts curving down. And that the head tells us more about how we process information, what those guards on the gate might look like for those desires of the heart. And straight lines are about understanding that we're results people. That straight lines are getting, that's the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So what happens is you can see that straight line people are the ones who are in a hurry to get results or definitely focused on getting results. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need our results people. And our curved lines, now they're all about taking in a richer experience. This is more of, I like to call them my tourists, whereas my straight lines are the travelers. So the tourists are there to sightsee. They want the richest possible experience. So the more curve on a line, the more time that neural highway is taking getting to its destination. But you start to see your mind working, your heart, your mind, the electrical, and all of the possibilities that it carves out right there in your hand. And understanding that for every, yes, you can see that, all right, for short straight lines, I'm an impatient person. You see the criticism. Whereas if you start appreciating the fact that, all right, there's also the flip side to that, the results. These are people, I see some of my short straight, heart lines or headlines that are hard on themselves because they feel there's, they get so frustrated. They want results. They want to get where they're going. They like the mile markers to know that they've got progress, when they don't always see in context of their hand just how much they've accomplished and how powerful a force they are. And then we've got our rich, creative, curved lines, which bring in all of that flavor and that texture. And again, these are people who other people may judge as being less practical. So they're not as focused on getting results. They're there taking in the whole experience. But by the time they get to the collaboration with some of my results people, if you don't make the other person wrong, if you're open to experiencing something that you're not, then you can start seeing that it's like, wow, it gives you a 360-degree view. But most of us start out with our unconscious, and it's trying to limit risk. That's its whole reason for being. You've heard that conversation, right? That the unconscious is the largest part of our brain.
Oh, me?
And it's 2 seconds. Yes, I was going to say. And it's two. I want to make sure you're having a conversation with me here too, darling.
I'm here. Yes, the subconscious has much more capacity for information. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's 2 seconds faster, and because it's the oldest part of the brain. But it's a tape recorder. It's not smart. It takes in the patterns that are set the first 6 or 7 years of our life. We create a story around whatever that risk might be, or whatever is going on. And the brain, the unconscious has the responsibility for fight, flight, or freeze, the survivor in us. And our brain doesn't distinguish between an emotional risk and a physical risk. They've done studies now. I love how much they've done with the brain work. And the same part of the brain is stimulated when you have an emotional threat as when you have a physical threat. It still lights up those same areas. So that unconscious, that fast tape recorder is busy putting bodyguards between you and what you love and what you might risk losing. So when we start understanding that as far as loving yourself and loving your life, you learn how to put the bodyguards at your back instead of standing between you and what you love, because it can be very cunning as far as talking you out of that expansion possibility, talking you out of risking your heart, talking you out of, any number of opportunities to grow and change. Now, it is important for us to remember to slow down and assess all of the landscape. That's actually a good use for those, curved, straight, whatever it is. Those bodyguards show up in different ways for different lines. And so based on what's showing up in your hand, we all have, our bodyguards look different. They're individually configured for each one of us, but they'll still show up in some of the same language. Criticism, fear, doubt, judgment. And judgment is one of the most pervasive. It's one of the earliest, good or bad. And that, as far as loving your life, you make tremendous differences in your life when you start understanding that instead of something being bad or wrong, it simply exists to show you what is not your choice. It's like, okay, that doesn't work for me. Doesn't have to mean that it's wrong for everybody else. And even I've gotten into arguments because there are some people who say, well, there's universal things that are wrong. Violence, certain kinds of violence are wrong. And I understand where they're going to, but true universal love has no judgment along those lines. Everything serves a purpose. Everything. And so, it's a way of detaching from the judgment and yet still allowing it to inform you. And that's where the real power comes. And we learn that best when we start by letting ourselves off the hook with some of our judgments. Not to say that there isn't personal growth available. Some of what judgment starts out to do is, impose on us our own feelings as a guideline for what works. So it's like, okay, when you see something that really hits you, that you don't love, that, or you violently react to, it's a powerful opportunity to really, understand, okay, this is a big boundary for me because we're infinite. We have an infinite self inside of us. So we're here in a physical experience to discover the limits of this body, of this life, of this experience. And those judgments come up to show us that. So this is one of the ways that we can actually understand that bigger perspective in our hand, where those criticisms, where those judgments, where those fears may limit us, all because we have the potential to truly expand there. And so what I love telling people, because I've had, particularly the last few weeks, because there's a lot going on. I mean, there's really interesting times going on as far as shifting and changing and the internal dialogue. But there's a lot of people who are experiencing a tremendous amount of fear. Everything that has worked in the past is not working. They're hitting their head against a brick wall trying to make things come out the same way when it's just no longer the same formula. And it's all because it's an opportunity to go inside. That fear, that doubt, that insecurity makes us turn inside to find our resources. And the resources there are far bigger than any of us really walk around on a daily basis knowing. And that's back to that 90% untapped potential right there in your hand. Because each one of us individually it's so unique. Our fingerprints are the most unique thing about us. Think about that. It's like that information was started when you were 12 to 14 weeks in utero, and we carry it with us until the day we die. That's our physical existence. It's our signature. So our hands have so much information that's keyed to us, to our existence, to our personal life here, and us in a bigger sense than we can see it on a day-to-day basis. Does that help?
It helps a lot, actually. When you speak, it's like you speak the truth. It's like you're not just speaking from knowledge. There's something deeper in that. So I thank you. And I was thinking about what would the listener be thinking about, and when we really talked about the fingerprint, that really helped. Like, wait a second, obviously your fingerprint's very unique. So what does it have to say about the rest of your hands? So I've had a reading, so I've had the blessing of having that experience. So let's take the viewers now through a little, anything more you could share about their hands, because now you got them all curious, right? Whether they've had it done or not, I'm sure they've heard about it because it's been around for a while now, and a long time, probably before, I don't know how many years. You'll let us know that. But what can they do? What else can they do to look at their hands to be able to accept who they really are? And is there any changes that can be made that will also show up in the hands?
Oh, you're so good, Manny. You know just what to ask. Yes. One of the things I love is, except for our fingerprints, almost everything in our hand is up for change, even the shape of it. So when you see what's going on in your hands, you have the opportunity to change your mind and change your line. And even, change the blood flow. Back to what we were talking about with the heart has so much, the 100 times the electrical potential on the electromagnetic grid. It's got 100 times the charge of the brain and 5,000 times the magnetic. So when you send an emotional thought down a particular path, you're carving out a much deeper, darker line. So people can notice which lines are dark, which ones are faint. And there's, such a good idea to understand that your heart line should have the darkest part, the darkest line, and that the heart line is that first one that starts again under the pinky and rolls across the hand and up towards your first fingers there. So it's the top line, horizontal, and that one should have a fair amount of color to it. If it doesn't have, much, if it's faint or thin, it's a really good indication that you're not tapping into the desires of your heart, that you've got your guardians standing between you and what you love, as opposed to standing at your back protecting you while you move forward and experience this. That's one thing you can look at. And guess what? Again, just breathing into it and allowing the emotion to come up. Because here's the short heart lines. Let's focus on the heart for a minute, because I'm such a big fan of that. Not that the other lines are anything less, just we love to start with the desires of the heart. But if we look at our heart line, short heart lines mean that they're not as comfortable in the emotional arena. Their first job is to learn to get comfortable with the range of emotions. There's either too much or too little form, structure, discipline. And when I say short, I mean we're looking at one that ends mostly under that middle finger, that birdie finger, if you will. So a heart line that the darkest part ends under that middle finger or up to that line between the first and second finger. That's a short line. So these are people that, again, they need to learn to feel safe and comfortable with their own emotions before they can really open up to all of the desires of the heart. So the curved lines, the ones that curve up towards the fingers, towards the expression, have an easier time talking about what they're feeling, but they still are putting a really strong boundary or container. There tends to be a lot of shoulds, which can be a barrier to loving your life and tapping into that passion. Should can be a pretty heavy brick. And the short, straight heart lines under that middle finger, these are people who can feel overwhelmed. That's the one heart line that doesn't have an edge to relate to. There's no fingertips. There's no, edge of the palm. So the short, straight heart lines, these are the people who can feel so overwhelmed. They actually call this the hermit heart line. And these are people that need alone time more than most. They need to be able to disengage and step back so that they can actually feel their own feelings and learn to give them a frame of reference that's theirs instead of what somebody else thinks they should or shouldn't feel. But both of the short lines, whether it's curved or straight, their default is to go into action. Now, the short straight will do. The short curved will think. They'll study. They'll learn. So that's the coping skills. That's some of the guardians that they've got working for them that will keep them exactly looking. But here's the good news. As you add more capacity to feel comfortable with those emotions, as you add more sense of security in yourself while you're feeling your feelings and understanding your feelings and giving yourself permission for those feelings, then the line can extend. You can change your mind and change your line. Not that it's a bad line. Again, trust me, Earth hearts are some of the ones that have been the rock of Gibraltar. Mother Teresa, it's the Mother Teresas of this world. They're the doers that show it. They show their love in action. So there's real power in that. In our air, the short curved lines, these are some of the people who are the most innovative thinkers because they spend so much time researching. They spend so much time investigating how to put a container on those feelings that they bring us some of our biggest aha moments. But then as we move into the longer ones, these are the heart lines that show up more under that first finger, under that Jupiter finger, that pointer finger. Ones that from the middle of between those and over, these are more expansive hearts. So they've learned to be more comfortable with their own feelings, but now it's about understanding their feelings and other people's feelings. It's like, okay, then how do you bring the two together? So it's like, all right, how do you weigh out what I want and what somebody else wants? So that's what they're here to experience and understand. And both of the long straight and the long curved tend to be givers. And it's very powerful. They're definitely somebody who's capable of showing up with the long curved or the big extravagant gestures. Oh my gosh, these are some of my most romantic, some of the best, they're the ones who propose on a billboard at the baseball game so everybody could see, because it's not enough that they show the person they love that they love them. They want the whole world to know. And water hearts are the ones who you give them a call at 3:00 in the morning and you're crying, and they not only take the call, they drive over and sit with you. That's the water heart. That's that long straight heart. So, and we use the elements. You'll hear me refer to that just because it helps give people a frame of reference so that they can kind of give themselves a picture and to relate to as far as what their emotions are. The short straight heart line, that's the earth heart line. Again, think about it. The earth is our foundation, right? Rock solid. But it takes an earthquake to get it to move. That could be the drawback. And our short curved heart lines, again, these are the ones that end into that middle finger. That short curved, those are our air. That's that air heart. And then our long lines, we've got the long straight, that's the water. It literally looks like it could run right off the side of the hand. So it's easy to, understand that's that water heart. And then that long curved one that ends all the way up around to this area, these are our fire hearts. These are the humanitarian hearts, the ones who, like I said, are proposing on the billboard. So it's like these are the very expansive, very generous. But again, it's important for our Jupiter people to learn to balance giving, receiving, what they want versus what somebody else wants. So each one of these heart lines and the variations therein, because we have, all the dots on the hand, there's 1,000 different ways for it to end. And there's branches and forks, and we are so individual, and yet there's some similarities we can relate to if it winds up in one of these areas. So we can satisfy the two compelling needs that humankind has. One is to belong, and the other is to stand out. So it's like, okay, we can understand that each one of us, there's groups of other people that have similar heart types, but ours is unique to us because when you add it together with like our fingerprints, which is Richard Unger wrote a fabulous book about the fingerprints, and he did a lot of research. This is over 3,500 years old. I mean, China and India both fight for who were the authors of this, but I believe it can simultaneously come up. Information can simultaneously occur. Haven't we seen enough of that happen, Manny?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. good ideas, people of like mind will have that information, two different continents, two different places at the same time. So, but regardless of who came up with the idea, this information is, well over 3,500 years old. And some people have been doing a lot of modern updating to it because our minds are very different now than they were 3,500 years ago. So I think, a lot of the information does need updating, but we've added scans, brain scans. We have the ability now to see inside our minds and see how it's working. And the fascinating part is that it shows up in the hands as well. There's different regions of the brain that are responsible for brave action. There's different regions that are responsible for unconscious, the ability to just ruthlessly walk in and change the playing field without feeling any of the hesitation or remorse that some people who are very attached to tradition, some people are much more likely to be comfortable. They've got that in their mind. There's a region in their mind where they understand, and can see and operate on that shock change, on that. It's like a surgeon who ruthlessly goes in and cuts away parts of the people who are in surgery, but they need that help, that actually does something for them. In some cases, we won't argue that every surgery is necessary, but be that as it may, the capacity for that. Some people have that in an emotional arena. Some people have that in a business arena. They have the ability to go in, and even though something has always been done a certain way, they can completely overthrow. Yes. And I do believe you have that in your hands too, my dear. So that ability to go in and change the game.
I was looking at my hands the whole time, and you caught me. I was like, oh, she got me. I was looking at one of my lines and about emotions and addressing my emotions. So that's been something that I've been working on, and I'm sure my line's gotten a little longer as I continue to work on myself. I definitely have plenty to work as a human moment, and as being human, I love to be transparent, but honest. And I found what you were saying that in my hands, it shows itself too. So I'll ask you one other question, but I also want you to, from that question, loop into the 3 action steps that people can take, whatever the next actions are for loving their life, loving their hands, accepting who they are, the premise for loving your life. But are both hands mirrors where you can actually see the same thing, or are they actually a little bit different? Because when they're talking about lines, I'm like, all right, well, which hand should I look at? So I'm just curious for those who are watching, are they mirrors?
You are just the best to work with, Manny. That is a perfect question, because our hands, they operate together. They're literally wired into the different hemispheres of the brain. So the left hand is wired into the half of the brain that comes up with ideas, that's creative, that inspiration, musical impulse, all of these things reside in the hemisphere of the brain that corresponds with the left hand. Now, the right hand, we've got because think about it, in the left hand, we come up with an idea, or we come up with a musical, impulse, or, a facial recognition. But then what do you do with it? That right hand is wired into the half of the brain that then puts language, analytical ability, math, all of these things to help us give boundaries to that limited possibility that's over there in the left hand, or that hemisphere of the brain. So that the 2 hemispheres of the brain work together, the left hand and the right hand work together to give us both the creation and the action. And so the left hand, we like to limit, or I should say limit, it's the unlimited hand. We like to define it as the feminine, or more of the private life. And it's the receptive, what we're taking in, which means it can be what you've inherited from the family. Whereas the right hand is more of the masculine, the active, what you then do with what you've been given, or the public. So you'll see differences in quite a few people between the 2 hands, and that has everything to do with, again, how well the information is moving back and forth between the 2 hemispheres, whether there's stronger, deeper, darker lines in the creative side, or whether there's stronger, darker, deeper lines in the active side. And it's always fascinating to see, what shows up. One of the people I had the chance to read for is Harry Dean Stanton, and he plays the patriarch on Big Love, the HBO series. And he plays this big family man, but in his real life, he has been more of a nomad. Well, when I read his hands, I saw that in his left hand, which is what you start with, all the potential for that big family, that, that responsibility, that all of that was there. But in his right hand, not. But what's interesting is he goes, but I am patriarch of a family. And he pointed to Big Love, and I started laughing, and I went, isn't that interesting? Because it doesn't show up in his work hands, because in his world, in his brain, it lived on the creative side more so, far more so than it ever did in the active business side. So it just happened that his business was acting. He played it out as a reality from that creative side of his brain. And that was such a fascinating thing to see.
Well, I'll share. I was contemplating if I should share my own personal experience, but I am, because I love to be an open book. When you read my hands for the first time, if you remember, I know you do, you said to me that, your lines are showing that you could have a second marriage. And I was like, second marriage? What do you mean? I just got married, right? And so I made some conscious decisions about being very proactive, with having a relationship coach and working on my relationship, and now it's better than ever, and I bet you my lines have changed because of that. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that, and how that works for others as well.
I am so glad you did, because honestly, that is such an important story. Thank you for being vulnerable and transparent, too. And because you can change your mind and change your line. And I've had more than a few people show up with multiple marriage lines that did not want multiple marriages. But based on what they were thinking and the patterns that they've inherited, what they've learned, or didn't learn, these are all things that impact why it may take a couple of tries to get to the right marriage. But if you know that information, if you invest in, as you did, self-knowledge, communication skills, things that will help you connect with yourself and then with somebody else, well, that's so incredibly powerful. That's the perfect example of you can change your mind and change your line. And that's one of my favorite things about hand analysis, is because they've done studies. It's not money. Even health ranks below love and connecting somebody truly special. Having somebody to truly love that means as much or more to you than your own life is such a life-expanding experience. But for so many people, that's an avenue of frustration. Because I truly see in their hands, they haven't accepted themselves. They aren't, if you aren't comfortable with yourself, if you don't love yourself, if you don't accept all of the parts of you, then you cannot be as comfortable in an intimate relationship. I see plenty of people in partnerships, but I see a few people who are truly connecting heart to heart in the kind of intimacy that is, what I think everybody dreams of, mind, body, spirit connection. And so to do the work, it's worth it. I don't think there are too many things that are going to give you as big a payoff as that kind of connection. And particularly for you with a beautiful wife and your two beautiful kids. Okay. That's just it. Being willing to say, okay, where I'm starting from may not be where I wish I were, but I can get there. And when I change my mind, I change the line. And I have seen it. Fade lines. I mean, literally, once you don't send those thought patterns down that same line, down that same path in your brain, it actually does give you a new direction for it. So it gives you a new outcome.
That's beautiful. So what are the takeaways? What are the three takeaways to take, three action steps women can take right now watching this? Let's get to the rubber meets the road. There's so much amazing information, so much amazing breakthroughs, and coming from a totally different angle, because who thought that your hands had so many great insights? What's next? What's next for women listening or watching?
It's, it truly is our best personality profile, because it's us. It's right there in our hands. And I'm going to I know you said three, but I have two takeaways, and they're powerful, and I want them to focus on these two, because they work for everybody. But whether it's a curved or a straight line, short or long, there are two things that people can do. One is something I call Toothbrush Love. I created it because when you connect mind, body, and heart, you re-record those unconscious tapes that keep you limited far faster than if you're just using a positive affirmation, because you're connecting with the physical activity and anchoring it. So it gives you a focus. So with Toothbrush Love, I want you to write down 30 of the best compliments you never received. What you really wished your parents would have noticed, mom, dad, what you wish the teachers would have noticed, things that you liked about yourself or thought were special about yourself, but nobody else is paying attention to. With the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the boss, whoever it is, the coach. Write down 30 because it takes at least 21 days to start a new habit. So 30 is a good extension beyond that. So you're going to write those 30 compliments out on a piece of paper. You're going to put that piece of paper by your toothbrush. So when you're brushing your teeth in the morning and every night, you're going to take one compliment a day, and you can make a little check mark, whatever you want, to note that you're moving through this. But you're going to take that compliment, you're going to roll it around your head while you're brushing your teeth. You're going to think that thought. Then you're going to rinse, spit, look yourself in the eye, and see it, say it, hear it. It actually works on the brain chemistry, and I've seen it change the lines for people, because when you're taking care of yourself, when you're meeting your own needs, one, your brain trusts it because it's coming out of your mouth. But two, it's also, it shifts that need for approval. It brings that down. It reduces some of that so that you feel better about yourself from yourself. So it's very powerful. And morning and night, 30 days, those 30 compliments. I have some people who've been doing it now for over a year, because they liked it so much. Why not? It's completely up to the people watching it, but I recommend it for 30 days. And I just have a quick story before I'll tell you the second takeaway. But there was one woman who called me. She was crying so hard. I thought I was going to have to call emergency services. I'm going, what? She goes, I just had a call from my mother, and she said she was so proud of me, and she was just sobbing, and I was thrilled for her. And then we both had a good laugh, because she said that they promptly got in a fight because she told her mother she'd waited her whole life to hear her say that. But it was something that she'd been practicing on Toothbrush Love, and that was something that she'd really wanted to hear. So that's how powerful this can be. The second takeaway, for everybody who's got, just even 3 extra breaths in the morning, time for 3 more deep breaths in the morning, while you're going to think your emotions are your dashboard. So for today, you can drive without a dashboard, but it sure gives you a lot of important information. So for today, you're going to tune into your dashboard. Anger is about protecting something. It's like a boundary. Beyond this, you do not go. Sadness is about letting go of something, whether it's a thought, a perspective, a situation, a person. Frustration is that gap between where you want to be or what you want to happen and where you are now. So it's a timing issue. It's understanding your emotions are your dashboard, and they have some really good information for you. So when you take those 3 deep breaths in the morning, you're just going to say, I'm going to listen and look at my dashboard today. And at the end of the day, when you're finished, you're going to do some of the same. You're going to just review. It's like, okay, you may have missed the opportunity during the day, but guess what? That dashboard report card is still there at night. So you can lean back in bed, take 3 deep breaths again, and just give yourself the moment. It's like, okay, this is what I felt. You'll do something about it. You will. But the fact is, before you do something about it, just allow the emotion to come up and let it talk to you. Let it tell you what it has to say. So those are 2 very powerful things that everybody can do that can strengthen the heart line, that can extend the heart line, that can help translate some of those guardians that are there to protect us, but in most cases are standing between us and what we love instead of guarding our back. So it'll turn them into the at your back guardians instead of between you and what you love. Those are the 2 takeaways.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I knew you were brilliant, and you know that I've learned a lot over the last few years in my own personal growth, but those 2 takeaways, those are very special. I was like, whoa, Toothbrush Love? That's a great idea. And the dashboard, wow, those are cool. Those are way cool, so thank you for those. And, I've had the personal pleasure of working with you and having my hands read, and I know that some of those people who are interested in having their hands read, they may be like, well, I'm not, in LA where Lisa is, and I know the answer to that, but I'm going to let you answer that. And also share what you have in the store for those who are watching that want to learn more about what you do.
Thank you, Manny. I always love meeting new people and dropping in on a new pair of hands. And we're not limited by geography anymore. Don't we just love technology? Over 40% of my clients are overseas, not just out of state. So we use Skype, we use digital hand scans and photos, and we work and record the call. So anybody who has a pair of hands they want more information on, they want to love themselves and see themselves in perspective, I'd be delighted. And particularly for you today, I'll have a special offer in the store because I meet the best people through you. So we'll do a special discounted reading, and we can drop in and enjoy getting to know somebody through their hands.
Awesome, Lisa. Thank you so much for being a stand in my life. One of the things that really touches my heart about our connection is that I feel seen. I feel understood when I connect with you. I feel that you get my vision, you get who I am, and I just feel so great when I'm in conversation with you, I'm around you, even when I think about you. So I'm so grateful to have you in my life.
Manny, you know what? That means the world to me because I have had a chance to see your hands, and you are a powerful force. And you know what? I just love that you shared that because honestly, that is the best gift for me with hand analysis is it does give you the chance to see people. And I am so blessed to have seen so many people. I feel like I've taken the best view of each one with me, and it lights my day, and it gives me energy and enthusiasm far beyond anything I thought I could have, just because who we are is spectacular in so many different ways. So thank you for being you. You're fantastic at it. And I lean on that. I rest on the fact that there's Manny Goldman in the world.
Oh my gosh. What do I do with that one? See what I'm saying, guys? See what I'm saying? Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us, everyone, as well. It's been an amazing time together, and stay tuned for more. Bye for now.